One is that something I've been seeing on like Twitter and Instagram is that the picture of like AI detecting breast cancer 5 years before it developed
Yeah.
was posted and kind of went pretty viral. And
Yeah.
people in the comments were saying, we need more AI solutions like this and
Yeah.
not just another thing to do homework with.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
another segue is a lot of things are going around Twitter saying that now teachers are grading with AI.
Yeah.
And so if students are like doing homework with AI and teachers are grading with AI, what's even the point in like going to school? So I guess my like actual like question or topic I wanted to pick your brain on was what like larger solutions similar to like detecting breast cancer or these types of things do you see happening in the future, say 5 years out, not only with our company here and like what we do, but as well as some other people in the field?
So that's a really interesting question when you kind of break it out. Classically, futurists have been people that spend a lot of time looking at the past to try and intuit what the future is going to look like. And it's relatively easy to go pretty far, to go 20 years in the future. All of these cool things are going to happen. But to go 5 years in the future or 10 years in the future, that's more than just your magic 8 ball and a little bit of prognostication. So in this space, you have to drive the question of what is going to generate money versus what's going to generate benefit.
Right.
And is, solving your homework, you stumbled onto the dark internet theory without even realizing you were doing it. That most of the traffic that is moving around in the internet right now is just bots talking to other bots. So there's not actual real things happening. There's not actual.
It's like when the Twitter purchase happened, they said that up to like 80% of their accounts were not, maybe not AI, but like bot accounts, like fake.
Well, yeah, and I mean, a bot is theoretically artificial intelligence. I mean, technically, it's artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's acting on its own based on a given set of parameters,
Okay.
which is our definition, or what the definition we should have for AI. And then we move into the eponymous AGI right now, which is an agent of some type that could act to solve a problem using multiple tools and multiple solutions, and act on its own to do that. And some of those definitions are being thrown around like they don't mean a whole lot, but ultimately, with the big players in the space, your foundational players, your OpenAI and your Anthropic and your Microsoft and your Google and even Amazon to a degree, even though they're partnered with Anthropic, those players are trying to do what they say and come up with a foundational model, some model that does a whole bunch of shit. But our brain doesn't work that way. Nature doesn't work that way. Nature makes razor blades. Nature is very, very precise in what it's trying to do. So doing big, broad things don't make sense. You come up with a hammer, versus actually a screwdriver or a socket wrench. Those broad scale solutions don't solve problems, but they distill down into things that do solve problems. And that's where I think we're going to see some really interesting things happen in the next 5 years. There are a large number of individuals out there who are working on, I don't want to say large, there is a decent number of individuals out there that are working on some really challenging problems that artificial intelligence can help with, deep learning and machine learning, pattern matching. And the most notable of them are the three spaces where we have to figure shit out as the human race. Number one is energy. We need to figure out energy problems. I don't want to say solve, because that's something that Sam Altman has thrown around quite a bit. And it's like, how do you say you're going to solve Spanish? You have to learn about it, continually learn more.
Yeah.
You can't solve physics. You learn about it. But the energy that we're using for both these systems and then for ourselves is increasing exponentially. So we need to figure out better ways to do that. The second space is in human capability, human performance, which can be translated into human longevity pretty easily. Oh, we want to live longer. But if you were in the body you had when you were 90 years old and you're decrepit and not able to do a whole lot, you live for another 100 years, that kind of suck.
Yeah.
So, we need to have the performance aspect of it. And that's all the way down to the molecular level, the ability to treat disease in our own body and to enhance the things that we're doing. There's a lot of ethical concerns in that space. Are we going to build superheroes and supervillains and all of this other stuff, which is a legitimate thought problem that we need to look at and think about. And then the third space that we need to look at is, and I'm being very broad, is the environment. It's not whether you're talking about climate change or you're not, whether you agree or you disagree, the Earth's flat, whatever. I don't want to get into that shit. But it's where you exist needs to be worked with or changed, modified in a way that you can actually exist in it. Whether that's your house, your living space, or the entire planet that you're existing on. These are gigantic problems that all have these little sub problems buried underneath them. To go back to your point about, can we detect cancer early? That is one space within that human performance space. So I think where we'll see some really big gains are in those three spaces. But those are not problems where you're going to see the unicorn, solution happen in 3 years. You're going to see these little incremental changes that are going to add up over time. And the first of those is the ability to detect cancer sooner. The statistics actually show that if you can find cancer 2 years before we do right now, 90% of the fatal cancer cases that we've looked at are treatable.
Oh, wow.
If we could find them 2 years ahead of where they're being discovered currently.
Just through conventional methods?
Just what we have now.
Wow.
Like just the treatments we have now. If you actually look at the basis of chemotherapy and radiation therapy in cancer, it's almost 100% effective. Wow. The problem is that the tumors grow faster, or they're too prevalent, or there's too many of them, and that's
why they've already spread so far.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So if you could find it sooner when the tumor was smaller, or there was only one, or there was other ways for it to be operable, you could effectively cure cancer. Because our treatments right now are incredibly effective. They just don't work when there's a jillion tumors, or the tumor's the size of your head. That is like, that would be weird. So finding it early detection is great. And then we pivot into early treatment, and we pivot into different treatment methodologies. And the same thing applies to energy. What is the more efficient ways that and then you're starting to deal with molecular engineering and mechanical engineering and chemical engineering. What metamaterials, what standard elements could we use to build better wires or more transmissible materials that we can move electricity better, since our society is so dependent on electricity. And then the environment. All right, we're all aware that some changes are taking place in our environment. Now, whether or not you ascribe to the global warming / climate change, or, that it's some country obscuring things or seeding clouds, wherever we want to end up, if we can manipulate the environment that we live in, then we can extend human life, extend human performance, use more resources. So climate models are humongous. There's hundreds of trillions of parameters in those. And if we can build better energy and more compute, then we can use better models, and we can predict climate changes better, which will reduce the incidence of these things. And if you're on the crazy end of the spectrum and you think that certain parties are seeding clouds and creating hurricanes, you could then predict that using a more effective climate model and stop it, which starts to sound an awful lot like something you would see in a Marvel movie.
Yeah. I think that's something that people don't realize, is that the way AI can affect most people, I think, especially with this cancer example, is actually through like the diffusion of effect. And so, like, say, like you and I both have had people in our lives affected by cancer, right? And so I think that the way AI can affect, just in the specific example, more people, is the fact that if less people are dying, less people are grieving, right? And so if, say, 1%, I don't know what the statistic is, you'd probably know better than I do, but say 5% of the population gets cancer, then say 30 to 50% of the population are affected by cancer, or in some way their family or people they know. And in that way, if we can essentially cure cancer through the use of AI detection, then we've in fact made everyone's life better. Right. And so I think that as a short-term goal in the next 5 to 10 years is a real tangible thing that we can achieve just to improve the lives of human beings across the planet. Right.
And that's a really salient point, is that the impact, the old joke, the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, like everybody in Hollywood is away from doing Kevin Bacon. So it's the diffusion of the impact associated with that. And then if you want to be really kind of tyrannical and dictatorial about it, it's those people who are experiencing mental distress or physical distress as a result of that are not productive members of society. They're not able to go to work as much. They're not able to, because they're dealing with mental health challenges or physical health challenges.
Or just the emotional weight.
Exactly. So at that point, you have detracted from the global performance that we would
Right.
be doing to advance things further. And it's a very difficult argument to make, because then, you're talking about opportunity cost and, larger
Yeah.
scale, end curves and things like that. But the reality is, in your own microcosm of your life, when you're dealing with a person or multiple people that have suffered from cancer, and you could have caught that earlier, you could have seen it earlier, you could have treated it, you could have extended life or reduced the psychological, physiological impact to the people that are around that by not creating as much suffering, then you've solved a problem that is theoretically unsolvable.
Correct. Yeah.
So
That's
it's
what we do.
yeah, that's what we do. That's how we operate. We're tackling the biggest things that are out there, simply because not a lot of people are.